The Maple Leafs keep the winning streak alive with a big time win over the Golden Knights, and it was some unlikely heroes coming up big in the victory. We'll break it all down on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leafs Central podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. It's Friday, and it's Victory Friday. It's 6 in a row, Dave. Toronto Maple Leafs keep it chugging. Morgan Riley back into the lineup, and it did not disrupt things. They kept it going. A big-time victory over the defending Cup champions. 7-3 was the final over the Vegas Golden Knights. A big-time game from really the whole lineup, 1 through 4, pairs 1 through 3, and even Marty Jones got the victory.
I think that's the big one there is that everyone contributed. This wasn't a core four came out and did it. This wasn't Austin Matthews carrying the team on his back. This was the whole team doing it on the second half of a back-to-back. Nonetheless, like this, usually they've had some issues with those second half sometimes, just the effort in terms of and things like that. But first period alone, like they had over 20 shots on goal in the first period. Like they were in Vegas came out strong. They weathered the storm, and after every goal, you're just like, "Is this team okay? Like, is this the Leafs? Like, what are we watching here?"
I know it was wild. It was coming really quick too. Like to be honest with you, I actually had missed the first like 5 or so minutes of the game, so I missed the McCabe goal. So I was like, "Oh no!" And by the time I got back home, I put it back on, and next thing I knew, boom, it was 2-0, then 3-0. Then really quickly 4-0. I'm like, holy, what the hell is going on right now? The route was on from there. It did make it interesting. They did make it interesting as they typically do. The Leafs gave up a couple of early ones in the third period. Sheldon Keefe had to call his timeout. It's kind of back-to-back games where he's had to do that to settle the team. I did like what Keefe had to say about that situation after the game, though. I'm not sure if you had a chance to listen to it post-game, but he was talking about how it's actually good that stuff like that is happening in games like this against opponents like that, because to have momentum and then to give it away like that, but then to be able to battle back and throw at that, that punch back once you get popped in the mouth, that counter punch, he said is something that they need to learn how to do a little bit, right? Like it's tough sometimes to get yourself in that situation with against playoff teams, when things are going well and then not so well, and then you really quickly can turn things back on a dime and take control of a game again, especially on the second half of a back-to-back against the defending Cup champions. He said he was really pleased by the efforts of the whole team in that third period, the way that they took the game back after, about 6 or 7 minutes of sloppiness to start that third period, which was really good to see. But the depth really stepped up big time. Like you talked about the first period and how well they played 4-0 without a single point from Matthews and Marner. Like it was everybody else who stepped up around him, which was really great to see.
Yeah, it was really great to see. And you're starting, and I think now more so than ever, the changes that Sheldon Keefe made to the lineup are starting to really bear fruit, and people are starting to take notice.
Yeah,
a lot
absolutely.
more.
Absolutely.
Right. I throughout all this, the blue line's been getting a lot of credit for sticking up with Morgan Riley out. We talked about Austin Matthews going on this ridiculous score, streak right now. But Sheldon Keefe, I don't think has really started to get the attention for what's happened with this team until now, because now you're starting to see, moving Tavares down the lineup has really benefited him and the team, right? Ryan Reeves has actually looked playable after we wanted nothing to do with them, right? It's the little things like that that are really coming together. And this is what we were kind of talking about the last few months is it's got to be a full team effort if this team wants to go anywhere, because the core four is going to be a target of any team they go up against in the playoffs. You need the other guys to step up. And this game right here, I think, should show the rest of the league there's more to this team than just the core four right now.
100%. You get 2 goals from Max Domi. You get a goal from Pontus Homberg. You get a goal from the blue line with Jake McCabe. David Camp scores. And John Tavares, back-to-back games with a goal at 5-on-5 after only one in his previous, 30-something games. It's wild. It's really, really wild, how well the team played up and down the lineup. And you mentioned Sheldon Keefe and the decisions that he's making with the lineup. I thought one decision that he made last night was deciding not to break up the D pairs basically, and didn't force Riley back into a top role, or force him back onto a top pair and break up a good thing. He looked at the pairs. He said, I like what's going on with Liljegren and Brody right now, with Brody playing on the left. I like what I got going on with Benoit and McCabe. Let's not mess with a good thing. Riley, you're going back in. You're going to play, a big role. How many minutes did Riley play last night?
He played about 18 and a half minutes, I think is where I saw
it. 18 and a half minutes. And it was a good 18 and a half minutes. He was actually really solid in that time. But again, it was just a situation where, Sheldon Keefe was like, I'm not going to mess with a good thing. Riley, you'll get your minutes. Don't worry. But you're going to skate, with William Lagesson. That's going to be your partner for most of the night. And it was the right decision. It was a good coaching decision, lineup decision. So Sheldon Keefe did a lot of really good things over the course of this 6-game winning streak that they're on, deciding not to, kind of shoehole, Riley back into the position that he was in before the suspension. I thought is another good decision that he had made. All right, let's take a break. Let's come back. Let's get into our 3 stars of the game, and then Leafs back in action tomorrow. They get the Colorado Avalanche. They get right back at it against another top-tier team. That's back-to-back games against former Cup champions the last 2 years. So it's a good stretch, good litmus test, as they say, for the Buds. So we'll talk about that on the other side. We'll get to our 3 stars of the game. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualification and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast, and listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. We are hosts here at Locked On Leafs, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast. You can find the show wherever you find your podcast at, whichever app or provider you use, and also up on YouTube for the daily show, for the daily video version of the show. Just search up Locked On Leafs, hit subscribe, and we got new content coming out each weekday, Monday through Friday. Big win last night for the Maple Leafs, 7-3 over the defending Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights. Let's go through our 3 stars of the game like we do after every victory. Let's start with your 3rd star, Mr. David Morassutti.
I'm gonna go with John Tavares. I think him with Pontus, him with Bobby McMahon and Nick Robertson, like that's such a great trio because he doesn't have to do the grunt work of retrieving the puck. Like Bobby McMahon, you saw in that goal that he scored, that was Bobby McMahon doing a lot of work to get him the puck. But you got to give him kudos. The guy couldn't find a 5-on-5 goal. So what's the solution? Put him with the two younger players. Although Bobby McMahon's 27, but thing with you add Robertson to that, kind of averages out a little bit better. But I've liked that line. It's a good line, especially with road matchups where the top six might get a little more of the tougher defensive assignments. Those guys can be a lot more productive, and John Tavares is doing that right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that line, they've obviously had a lot of success over the course of the last couple of games here, and um, John Tavares, this is very clearly like a demotion. I mean, you're $11 million and you're playing on the third line. It kind of is what it is, right? Like he's used to playing upwards of 19, 20 minutes a night. Now he's playing what 14, 38 last night. So he's not used to this, obviously, but I think this is probably best for the team, honestly. And, that's now back to back games where he's got a goal at 5-on-5. You got to be happy with what that line has been able to give you. I'll be curious to see how long they go with this experiment. Is this a long term view for Sheldon Keefe, or does he view this as it's working right now, so let's roll with it? Just trying to give it a little bit of a segment. I will be curious because I thought Max Domi, who I'll talk about in a sec, he's on this list, has played well at 2C, and how long is that going to happen? And then if he slips, does then that prompt all right, now let's see if John, now that he's going again, now that he's scoring again, can we put him back up in an elevated role? I'll be curious to see how that kind of works out going forward. I give mine to Mitch Marner. Thought Marner still had a pretty good game. I mean, despite being held off the score sheet in the first period, still ended up with 2 assists on the night. One on Domi's goal, and then I had another on Austin's goal. I just look at his game and, he's still just so good on both ends of the ice. That's now 6 straight games, Dave, with 2 or more points. 6 straight with 2 or more points. It's wild. It's actually insane what this guy's doing right now. I think that's 18 points in 6 games. Like it's just stupid stuff. Absolutely. Or sorry, 14 points in 6 games.
Little tidbit here from Sportsnet Stats on Mitch Marner. His multiple assists in 6 straight games. The only longer streak of 2+ assists in NHL history is 8 games by one Wayne Gretzky.
There you go. So we'll see what he can do in Colorado. Sometimes those are pretty high scoring games. They can be whenever they collide with the Avalanche. So we'll see if he can keep it going against the Avs. I mentioned Max Domi, and that's the guy who was my second star. I thought Domi had a terrific game, maybe his best game as a Maple Leaf, had a couple of goals. He had a funny quote after the game about his first goal. Yeah, the first goal where he's like, yeah, it was like my controller malfunctioned for a second. I got the puck and just didn't shoot it for a little. And then he finally had to get the rebound and scored on the second opportunity. But ends the night with 2 goals, scored another on the breakaway. And, Sheldon Keefe spoke about him after the game too and said he's been equally as impressed with what he's been able to do of late on the defensive side of the puck, just being able to be aggressive and close on guys when, the puck is in their own end. And, that's kind of been a bit of a knock on Domi for a while is, yes, he's offensively gifted and talented, but can't play in his own end very, very well. And that hasn't necessarily been the case over the course of the last couple of games here. And I think he knows that if he wants to keep in this elevated role, he's going to have to play both sides of the ice. And I think that's another trio that's just kind of clicking right now. Domi, Bertuzzi, and Nylander. It's been a couple of games here where they just seem to be just overwhelming teams in the offensive end. Like they're just moving the puck around, shooting pucks on net with great consistency, getting a lot of good chances. So Max Domi for me was probably the second star.
Yeah, I actually had him as my first star. I like the feistiness. the speed that he has, like second goal he scored, that's all speed right there.
Oh yeah.
He's showing that, you know what, maybe he's a little better than what we've seen in terms of his goal scoring ability. He's starting, and again, slow start, but it's not when you pour it on in the right time, that's all that matters for the guy like that. So, I think he's looked really comfortable as that second line center right now, and yeah, we'll see how long it can last for. I think, he's a guy that's proven that he can produce at the NHL level. It's just, does the other part of the game kind of come together? And I like that him Bertuzzi, that's kind of like the get under your skin duo right there together, right? They're, and Willie is kind of getting a little more feisty playing with him. It feels like I think he realizes that with them there, he can be a little more chippy, and he has a couple of guys that have his back. So yeah, I've really enjoyed what Max Domi has done. I think a lot in the attitude that he brings too. I think they asked him last night about Matthews and should he get some Selke nods, and he's like, we don't care about that. We only got one goal in mind.
Yeah. I think they asked him that because Jake McCabe came out and said that he should be getting some. He said both him and Marner should be getting a lot of Selke love, but he was kind of talking about Matthews more in depth and just saying how that guy, he's always a really good outlet for the defenseman. He's always in the right spot. He's always back there, and just an unbelievable two-way game. He's like, for as good as he is, everyone talks about his goal scoring. He's been more impressed with how reliable and consistent he is in his own end, which obviously is great to hear when the guy also has now 52 goals in 55 games, Dave. Just unbelievable stuff. We'll see where that number gets to. I don't know, but it seems like he is almost good for a goal a night at this point. So who's your
my second star is Pontus Homberg.
Okay, perfect.
Just a couple. I'll give Nick D'Souza a little credit for these stats. 1 goal, 1 assist last night. That goal he scored, ridiculous.
Yeah,
the shots were 12-1 in Toronto's favor with him on the ice.
Yep.
Goals were 3-0 in his favor on the ice.
Yep.
There's a reason why that fourth line, why Ryan Reeves and David Kampf look a little more playable. I think Pontus Homberg has played a big part of that, right? I was kind of getting on I don't know how much longer Pontus Homberg is going to be able to last, especially with Calle Jarnkrok, poised to return. A game like that makes that decision a little bit tougher now.
Well, does it? I think it kind of makes it very simple for Sheldon, where it's like, I don't know if I can take this guy out of the lineup.
No, I don't think so.
He could provide a spark like that. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know if that guy comes out. And now that you've got guys like Willie, like Austin, killing penalties, and when Jarnkrok comes back, I think it makes it easier actually for a guy like Noah Gregor to come out of the lineup, and that's kind of where you end up inserting. Like if Noah Gregor can come out for Ryan Reeves and that fourth line have the amount of success that they had tonight, I think there's your answer. Like, that's the interchangeable piece, not Pontus Homberg, because my first star was the fourth line in general, and the number one driver of that line tonight was your guy Pontus Homberg. Unbelievable goal, like you said. You mentioned what he was doing, but as a line, that fourth line outshot their opponents 10-1. They had 12 scoring chances, 7 high danger chances as a line at 5-on-5. Those are all team highs, Dave. All team highs when you consider all three of or all 4 lines. Like, that's how good of a game that team had. You had David Kampf go out there and score a goal. Nice power move to the front of the net. You had Holmberg with his really nice goal. Reeves tried to do his best for David Kampf by taking the puck out of the corner and taking it hard to the net. They were consistently in the offensive end the entire night. They won 89% of their shifts with an 89% expected goals. And, they won a lot of puck battles, and they kept the play alive in the offensive end quite often. It was just like kind of wave after wave, really good shifts, which allowed, Matthews line or the Nylander line or the Tavares line to come on after and sustain pressure. And when your fourth line can do that and keep pucks out of your own net is one thing. To play well defensively in your own end is another, but to apply pressure in the offensive end for like a full minute, which is what they did a couple of times last night. I mean, that's more than what you could ask for out of a fourth line. So I thought last night in particular they were great. And I had a tweet about Pontus Homberg actually that I want to bring up, that I want to read here, because I'm with you where he deserves like the most accolades for the success of the fourth line last night. But what I really noticed about him and what he was doing last night was kind of his defensive play and his forechecking. I said this. Pontus Homberg must be picking up some tips from Matthews when it comes to his twitchy stick on the forecheck in the offensive zone. That's a couple of times tonight I've seen him be disruptive with an active stick, which has allowed for sustained pressure by the fourth line. I don't know if you've noticed this, but like the guy consistently, it seems like, is just kind of checking dude's sticks. Like when the opposition is passing to another player, he's just getting a quick stick check or stick lift or getting a stick in there and just kind of disrupting things. And that's exactly what you want to see. So Pontus Holmberg for sure, possibly his best game. And that's crazy to say because he's played up on a top line with Matthews and Marner, but I thought he was just absolutely dominant last night along with that entire fourth line.
Yeah, it's again, we talked so much about how this fourth line has looked brutal, right? Start of the year, we didn't want to see that fourth line out there.
Yeah, Camp too. Like I gotta give love. Ryan Reeves, man. Like I'll give love. Like, look, I'm tough but fair when it comes to Ryan Reeves, and he had a great game last night. Not gonna take it away from him. Like this fourth line should run it back in Colorado. I think they deserve it. Like David Camp might have had his best game also of the season last night for the Maple Leafs.
Yeah, like David Camp has been a player I've been very concerned about because he hasn't really been winning the faceoffs. You count on him a little more offensively than what he's done. He just hasn't looked great. He's looked better since he's come back from that injury. So maybe there was something there that he was fighting through and finally got it right. But Calle Jarnkrok's supposed to come back soon. I think don't have to rush him back. Give him a little more time. If he needs more time to heal that knuckle, give him the time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back and let's get into tomorrow's game. Tee it up, Leafs and Avalanche in Colorado. Leafs will try and make it 7 in a row. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Ibotta. Grocery bills are so expensive these days, but now they don't have to be. Start getting cash back on your grocery bill every time with the free Ibotta app and get cash back every time you shop. Ibotta is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items of groceries, to beauty supplies, to toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. So you can buy that flight you've always been eyeing, that game that you're dying to go to, or the fancy dinner that you've been craving. Join the over 50 million users and earn cash back every time you shop from the over 2,700 brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONNHL when you register. Go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use the code LOCKEDONNHL. That's Ibotta in the Google Play or App Store and use the code LOCKEDONNHL. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Only got a couple of minutes here, Dave. We got to kind of wrap things up quickly. Leafs going into Colorado tomorrow, though. They'll be looking to make it 7 in a row. I don't anticipate any changes to the lineup for tomorrow, except probably Ilya Samsonov, I would imagine, would get the start. Outside of that, I think it should be pretty status quo for the Toronto Maple Leafs tomorrow night.
It should be. Like, you don't want to tinker with a winning lineup too much, and I think everything is kind of working as it is. And this is a good Colorado team that you can't try different things with. You can't keep things the way they are. Everything is working. Nothing's broken.
Yeah, and I think was it McCabe last night? I think it was McCabe. He had a really good line about Mark Masters had asked him like, why do you think your team has played really well during the 6 game stretch? And he said something to the effect of, we're just playing simple. We're just playing kind of straight line hockey, playing very simple, and that's really what we got to do. Mistake free hockey and uh, playing as a team. And I thought that it was just, I don't know. He said a lot better than I did. Try to paraphrase. I couldn't find the quote verbatim, but I think that they should do the exact same thing. Like it's clearly working. It is a winning recipe, and it's nice that we've seen everybody buy into it as well. And I think that it would be even more of a message that people will buy into if they can go out and beat the Colorado Avalanche as well. You know what I mean? Like this is a tough team. Not to say that Vegas wasn't, but Vegas, as well as the Leafs played, Vegas did not play well, and Vegas was missing a couple of key pieces, obviously with Jack Eichel and Mark Stone up front. Doesn't take away from how well Toronto played, just not as big of the beast as a defending cup champion as you would hope they would be. But Colorado, that's a tough team, man. Like McKinnon's firing on all cylinders. Rantanen's firing on all cylinders. Like they've got Cale Makar, and they are going to be a handful for sure. So it's going to be a big test for them going into Mile High tomorrow, and we'll see if they can get it done. They lost the earlier meeting against Colorado earlier this season in Toronto. It was a 5-3 loss. Actually, if you recall, they got off to a really good start, and then it all fell apart. So hopefully that does not happen tomorrow, and they can get it done. And the Maple Leafs can keep it rolling, because a win against Colorado would definitely go a long way to convincing Brad Treliving, hey, this team's got a chance, and maybe they're worth going out and making some big additions with a big statement win against the defending, last 2 seasons ago's defending champs. Back-to-back wins against the back-to-back defending cup champions.
Well, and the thing is, Colorado hasn't exactly been firing on all cylinders. I think they have like 3 wins this month. Now, a lot of them have been close games. Like I watched the game they played against Detroit a little bit, and like first off, Patty came with a beautiful goal, but Nathan McKinnon had 11 shots on goal in that game.
Yeah,
he's got like a ridiculous point streak at home. I think it's in like 30 or so games.
Every game. Every single game, he's got a point at home. Yeah, it's wild. Just looking now, they've only got 3 wins so far coming out of the All-Star break. They lost 4 in a row, won one, lost one, won a couple, and then they lost to Detroit. But those 2 that they won were against Vancouver's in a losing streak, and then Arizona, who's in a big losing streak. So outside of that, no big statement wins here in the month of February.
And I'll add one other thing to that is going up against Nathan McKinnon, I want to see how this Leafs team can defend against this is probably the toughest player they're going to play in a really in a long stretch here. So I want to see how they do against them.
Yeah, and I'll be really curious to see what Dangle will have to say after this game. I texted him after last game, not the why am I blanking? Who they just play? Not Vegas before that.
Arizona.
I texted him after Arizona when Matthews scored 50 and 51. You remember the comment he had about how Matthews and McKinnon, where he's like, oh, it's not even close. Like he's not even effing close to McKinnon. Texted him like, I think it might be a bit of a close conversation now. And he's like, you don't think I've thought about that clip every single second during this goal streak? I was like, yeah, okay, just making sure. So, McKinnon versus Matthews, that'll be a good showdown. And I'll be curious to see what our good friend Dangle will have to say about that one.
For sure.
But anyways, we gotta wrap things up here. But that'll do it for us on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow myself, follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. If you watched on YouTube and you enjoyed it, go ahead, smash that like button, leave a comment down below, as the YouTubers say. Would really appreciate that. We'll be back with another episode for you guys on Monday. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the game tomorrow. Go Leafs, go. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.